Just wait for you guys to join on there before a bit chat about what we've just seen here at St James's Park. Of course, just myself on these lives with the two other parts of the threesome. Anybody watched that video last week? Jordan Cronin and Dominic Skir, of course, down speaking of Eddie Howe. So you'll just have to put up with me for a little bit. Wait around, just see if anybody joins on to the live. I'll have a little bit of a wander. Right, I'll start by talking what I think of that game. Don't want to be like the proper Mr. Negative all the time, but I just think this is totally unsustainable chaos. I don't think this happens in a lot of places. I think to perform like this as a one-off is absolutely fine. To perform like that week in, week out, whether that be home or away, to have to score at least 3 goals to win a game, which is genuinely what they're having to do week in, week out now, is unsustainable if you want to move up. And I'm really disappointed, actually. I guess I see people jump in the comments. Yes, I am actually. That was a 2-2 win today, because both were the better team, created the better chances, particularly in that first half. Probably should have been ahead. I'm just going to move slightly up the stand here because it's starting to pee down again. up into the posh seats. As I'm sure you might have been to. I had one in pre-season, and it was nice and padded, a little bit less than the press box here behind us. Back to my thoughts on the game. Unsustainable chaos. I just don't think that you know what, at the end, because of the way the game played out, it's actually a point gained rather than lost. But you can't keep setting up the same way, picking the same players and expecting a different result. It's just pure insanity from the manager, in my opinion. I'm not into all of this. I put a post on Twitter. I'm not into all this major criticism of, you know, when I'm talking about anybody's jobs here and stuff. Some people always jump from the one extreme to the other. That's not really what I'm talking about. I think it's fair to criticise what you see from the team, which ultimately falls on Eddie Howe. And you wouldn't see a top. So I was making this point before. Sod it, I'll make the point on here as well. You transplant a Jurgen Klopp or a Pep Guardiola, and this is taking it to the absolute extreme, by the way, into this Newcastle United squad, and I guarantee you wouldn't see home and away, week in, week out, with the same players and the same setup. You wouldn't see this kind of chaos, which begs the question, does Eddie Howe have the answers to these questions? There are questions being posed, the same questions, week in, week out. Dan Burn gets left, you know, he was poor again today. But he's been hung out to dry as a left back. Every team in the Premier League, big, small, high, low, they're all targeting Dan Burn as a weak point in this team, and he just doesn't do enough to stop that second goal, in my opinion. It was poor. Martin Dubravka as well. I have to see it again, but I'm not really sure. It feels like it's a good finish. Good finish, don't get us wrong, but I'll have to watch it again. I wasn't sure about Dubravka, who made some good saves in the first half, to be fair. Defensively, I would argue, I watched Jamal Lascelles warm up, and I watched Tino Livramento warm up, and I don't believe Newcastle United are as good a defensive unit for Jamal Lascelles and Tino Livramento dropping out of the team. Because I said this on the last video last week, actually, and I'll say it again. It worked last season, it ain't working now. To play Sven Botman inside of Dan Burn is asking for trouble. Genuinely asking for trouble, with little to no protection in front of it and little to no sweeping up behind it. It is absolutely, you can see why teams target it. There's the lack of, Sven Botman's a lovely footballer, a lovely left foot, he's a good player. He's been good for Newcastle United, but playing him and Burn together on that left-hand side is suicide in many ways because of the absolute lack of pace, particularly in behind and mobility. It's criminal, actually, to think that It frustrates us in some ways, seeing that Eddie Howe just continues to play the same team and expect a different result. I like the tactical tweaks at Nottingham Forest, and it grabbed an element of control in that game. Newcastle United have only had zero control of this game today. The recent home games you look back on, you look at Ross Barkley in the 4-4, controlling the game. I looked at players like Ryan Christie today and Cook in midfield, able to control proceedings to a point. Newcastle United really lack that. They're really lacking that in all departments. I think if you're going to give the manager any fair credit, I think the Murphy change didn't work. Newcastle got worse for it. But it had to be done because of Barnes and obviously not playing for quite a long time and just easing himself back in. But the changes he did make when he brought Matt Ritchie on, Matt Ritchie and Joe White started getting on the ball straight away, showed a bit of confidence, which was good to see, and kind of got the ball moving and got that bit of energy and got the ball wide. And what Matt Ritchie is doing for that, I was actually really pleased for him actually coming on and scoring. I never actually thought we'd see this day again. What he was doing with that first header, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. And it's ricocheted off the defender and then ricocheted off the goalkeeper, and then he's managed quite smartly actually just to get something on it and get it in. But it was a big moment for him, and it was, you know, it was probably a fair result in some ways, but so disappointing to see Newcastle United just producing the same kind of performances week in, week out, and there's not really much alteration or change, or it's just, look, I think you can probably guess by my exasperated nature, the way I'm talking into the camera here, that I'm genuinely frustrated by what we're seeing, because, like I say, I think if you put a proven elite manager into this setup, I do believe he would either stop the rot. Yeah, you might not score as many goals, but would definitely stop the rot and stop things, the obvious happening. You can see everybody's target, and actually I can see in some ways why he plays Burn, his height, size, leadership, you know, tucking in. It's no good Dan Burn tucking in as that third centre half when Newcastle United have the ball. If every time it's a turnover, they just flip the ball over the top of him and Botman and Share, and there's no recovery and no pace. That was probably another negative to come from having Share going off in a Callum Wilson fashion at the end, when we'll get some update hopefully from Jordan and Dom soon when they do pop back up as the heavens. You probably can't even really grasp that, but it's absolutely bucketing down here as the players warm down. I'm gonna have a look in the comments, see what you guys are saying, because you've probably heard enough of my exasperated tone, pardon the fingers when they jump in. Let's have a look. What are you guys saying? Cheers for watching, cheers for your comments here as well. And you're not exciting at all, right? Well, I mean, it's exciting to an extent, but it's certainly not the controlled level performance of a team that should be fighting at the top end of the table. It looks a very unsustainable model in Newcastle, the way they're set up at the moment. What else we got? Same poor backline, Andy. Oh, yep, I agree. It's been really poor. I think Sven Botman has not been the same player this season. Of course, he's had his injury troubles, but when he's come back in the team, Jamal Lascelles, for me, isn't anywhere near as good a footballer, and I think probably the players would admit that themselves. But as a defender, he's been much better this season than what we've seen from Sven Botman. It's not even close, in my opinion. Couldn't watch the game. Craig Foggin, I don't know what that comment is. Craig Foggin rescued a point today. I thought, yeah, they did. That's what I'm saying. It was like 2-2 win, wasn't it? Like almost stupidly that it did feel like a point gained in some ways, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a disappointment. And I think it's that lack of foundation that, for me, that always underlines this. That it just feels so unsustainable. Everything about what's going on this season. Geordie 2 for life. It's just so open, especially midfield. Miley was my manager. Yeah, so we lack muscle, discipline. Have to change Burn against Arsenal. It's not fair. I'd go 5 at the back against Arsenal. I think that's a hammering waiting to happen, the way they're playing and the way we're playing. So I'd go to the 5 at the back, and I hope he does do that. But I do agree on Miley. Miley had a really good first half hour and then tried to make things happen in the second half as well. He's a young lad, he tires in games, but this was one of his better performances in recent times, and I was really impressed with him, to be honest. Geordie 2 for life again, thanks mate for your comment. What's really going on with Hall? Surely the lad deserves a chance in midfield or left back. Look, you've probably heard me talk about this on here, and I'll talk about it again. when Lewis Hall's been called upon, he has been nowhere near good enough. Yes, of course, everyone will look at the flashy volley at Old Trafford, but as a defender, he's looked rather poor. And I can only imagine, and I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I can only imagine it's probably more of the same that's been seen on the training pitch, because we're seeing the likes of Matt Ritchie get minutes and got a goal today, and Joe White come on, and Lewis Hall has been a midfielder for much of his life and was thrown in at left back and has struggled defensively. Doesn't look like a Premier League level defender yet. That doesn't say he won't be. Doesn't say he won't be a great player. I've no idea if he will. I've not seen enough of him ever make that judgment. But I think at present, Newcastle United need a Premier League left back to come in, and they haven't got one. But they've definitely got a right back who can fill in at left back better than what Dan Burn's been playing recently. Craig Fogg and Dan Burn, he's rested without Big Joe Linton. We're weak down left. That's one of the problems, I think, on that left-hand side, is the absolute lack of cover from front and back. So you would have Pope sweeping behind for the lack of pace, and you would also have a Joe Linton or a Willock or somebody giving that energy in front, just being able to cover the spaces and the gaps, and there's none of that at the moment. But that doesn't then mean you would just continually persist with the same players, in the same positions, in the same way. It's not going to work. If it's not working, it ain't working. It needs change and all that. And that's a manager's job. That's what I'm kind of getting at here. It's a manager's job to see these things and alter them, and change things in game, change things in the week you run up to games. To go to Arsenal next week and expect a different result by just picking the same team, I think he's setting himself up in the team up for absolute disaster. But it might not. You never know. They've produced performances, who knows? But I do think that about Burn, when you say he needs resting, potentially, I think Howe is in danger of potentially opening the player up for criticism, because I don't think there has been a lot of criticism his way recently. Darren Eales wanders down here behind me. You see that there? As I'm lurking around the press box. The director's box. So I think from now, I don't think people are criticising Dan Burn, because they say that he's a genuine professional. They say that he's been a good signing for the club. They say that he's done a really good job when needed. A good guy. Everything about him really positive. What Howe's got, the problem that Howe is creating, in my opinion, is that will only last so long. And the criticism is going towards Howe at the moment, saying, I wish you would change him, play Livramento. But that will start to change if Burn's performances, if from now at the end of the season, we keep seeing this, as we've seen over the last 6 weeks, this laboured performance with an intense target on him from opposition teams. It's hanging the player out to dry, and he's at risk of putting his player in the firing line, because people will start criticising the player if it starts costing points majorly, which it has so far. And if it keeps costing week in, week out, that criticism will go on the player, and I think that's quite unfair on the manager. Look, no manager will ever be told by a crowd who he should pick and who he shouldn't pick. There's lots of kids screaming up here. I don't know if you can hear that. All those weird sounds. They're all trying to shout at the players coming off the pitch here. It's Lewis Hall there, just pitch there, be soaked. Just giving the little fans a wave up there. There's a risk, there's a tipping point, there's a balance to get to, in my opinion, and I think no manager will. I should pick him. You should pick him by a crowd or by anybody. But the manager should be able to see that there's going to come a point soon where he probably does have to take him out. In my opinion, I think I've said this before earlier in the video. Anybody who was watching earlier, you might have just joined, but I'll reiterate that I think Newcastle United as a defensive unit or look weaker, look much weaker. Not only for, this is a purely defensive point, not only for Livramento not being in the side and Burn being in it, but they look a weaker defensive unit for Jamal Lascelles not being in the team and Sven Botman coming in. Because Jamal Lascelles, in my opinion, jump in the comments if you think I'm talking rubbish, Jamal Lascelles, in my opinion, has outperformed Sven Botman quite clearly this season. I don't even think it's close. Jump back in the comments, see what you guys are saying. JC, we're transitioning to a team that wants to control possession and win through technical build-up here. We don't have 10s. Have 10 Brunos. Yeah, you certainly don't. John Yola, Insanity's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Thank you for putting that so eloquently in the way that it should have been put instead of my garbled rubbish at the start of this video. But that is exactly the point I was getting at. JC, Eddie Howe's starting to get more negative chat against him on all the podcasts, etc. I'm thinking, he's at his level and he's getting found out. He needs to find the answers. Teams are posing questions, and I'm yet to see Eddie Howe produce the answer to it. Whether it's at home, whether it's away. I mean, they got away with it last week at Forest. I think we said that on our videos. It was a poor performance. But, you know, set pieces or whatever it may be today, even with some individual errors that they get let back into games, they need to start finding answers in game, and they need to start doing it quick, and that's on the manager. Kenny Morland, thanks for your comment, mate. Howe's in-game management has been terrible all season, cost us the Champions League, League Cup and countless Prem games. We've actually mentioned this in the videos. It's cross your fingers and hope, and that's what it was. It wasn't so much today, I can't say that, but it was in those ones that you're referring to, in PSG and Chelsea. Terry Hogg, try Shares a sweep in front of the defence. I don't know if Fabian Shares going to be fit now. It didn't look great when he came off the park. And we might see Jamal Lascelles back in that team quicker than we think, but it might not be for the player I think it should be for in Sven Botman. Johnny Ola, how long have we had to replace Wood, even a loan or free? I know it's just lunacy not getting a forward in, but that probably wasn't really the massive problem today. It's just midfield getting opened up and defence getting absolutely done over the top. Paul William, you can't sugarcoat that game, I agree. Very poor. Bournemouth, no great shakes. For Burns' sake, he needs to drop them. Yeah, I feel sorry for him. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's kind of the point I was getting at there, that there will come a tipping point where people stop feeling sorry when it starts costing too many points, and it'll go the other way, and that's on Howard, in my opinion. Nick Hart, you're not playing Hall, so you don't have to commit to buying the summer. No, that's not my understanding at all. I don't believe that is the case. Sounds like it's on position in the division, which sounds like it'll be ticked off, so it doesn't sound like it's particularly. Yeah, I'm just told that it's likely that will be ticked off. But we'll see. You never know with these things. There's always smoke and mirrors, and you never quite know, but that tends to be the suggestion at the moment. Right. Shall I run through the players themselves and what I thought, as I tend to do in these situations? You see the players there filtering away. There's Anthony Gordon down there with his family. Right, Dubravka, Nick's back. I think I'd like to see the second goal again. I wasn't 100% sure that he shouldn't have. Did he dive around it? It was a good finish. It was a good sharp finish. And of course, the slip. It's a risk taken. It was pouring all day. It was a risk. And I've seen a lot of players slip out there. But, you know, it was just one of them unfortunate things. I can't really get too critical of a player for that. It's just an unfortunate one. These things happen. Everybody made some good saves in that first half. Trippier, I thought Kieran Trippier was his usual self. I didn't think it was much. It wasn't. It was a 6 out of 10. Probably could have created a bit more going forward. Had a couple of moments in the second half where he was done maybe. But no, he's a good solid performer, as we know. Dan Burns less than that. Botman's definitely less than that. I thought those two were arguably Newcastle's probably two worst performers. Arguably, no, I think they definitely were. Fabian Schär had his moments. But it wasn't a good defensive performance in the main. Midfield-wise, I thought Miley was the bright spark. Had a really good first half hour. Had his moments in the second half. Showed a lot today. Looked more at home in that whole midfield role in the first half. Then was freed up a little bit as the game went on. I thought he was really good. Bruno tried his best to make things happen, as he always does. It's kind of what you expect from him. He always tries to make things happen. Didn't work for him today. Well, that's such his life. Sean Longstaff just did Sean Longstaff things. I don't think it was his best performance. I think that seems to take a little bit of criticism online. If you want to say a three worst performance today, he might well be in that bottom three. Although, because of that second half performance, even Martin Dubravka does jump into that conversation. Of the front three, quiet one for Harvey Barnes. I didn't get putting him as a central striker in that second half. Didn't work. Anthony Gordon, a real hit and miss day actually. Took his penalty well. Ran to the last. Tried to make things happen. Just didn't quite work for him today. Probably could have got into that goal with a header in the first half. Almost indecision killed his decision when he got clean through and almost didn't commit enough to take it around the goalkeeper. And didn't hit it early enough, as Elanga did last week against Newcastle United. So a hit and miss day, but all in all a reasonably positive one. Who else we got? Miggy Almiron did his usual, toiled, was better than he was last week by quite some distance, but wasteful when given opportunities. There was one particularly in the second half where he got through, could have literally just laid it on a play for Kieran Trippier on the outside, and it probably would have been a goal with that cross, but he didn't. He did the opposite and tried to curl it, and he put a couple in the Gallagher end in that second half, which will be disappointing for everybody. Have I missed anybody out? Don't think so. Matt Ritchie, class off the bench, came on, ran his socks off, put everything in, and got a goal, which I never thought we'd ever see again here. Joe White, I thought, came on and showed a little bit of positivity and maturity. You know, like, came on, tried to make things happen, and got on the ball immediately from getting on, and was involved in a little bit build up for that second goal. Jacob Murphy was disappointing off the bench, had little to no impact, and Newcastle United got worse actually when he came on as a central striker. But yeah, it's just one of those days, and I think as I've underlined in this chat, Newcastle United are chaos at the moment, and there is nothing sustainable about what they're doing. They're built on a very little foundation, and for that, in that regard, it's difficult to navigate a pathway in your own head to say, like, they'll definitely finish in the European places, or they'll definitely do this and definitely do that. I think it could go anyway. I said it last week, I'll say it again. Having to score 3 and 4 goals every single week to get results is never going to work. There's no team done that in the history of the Premier League, and there will be no team do that in the history of the Premier League, because there will come a point where, and it may be an injury here or there, or it may be a loss of form here or there, or whatever it may be, or you play against a decent side, or there'll come a point where Newcastle United will they'll have a game or whatever where the goals dry up, and having to score 3 and 4 every week is just purely unsustainable. Right, I'm going to end it there. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm going to have to go and do some work now, so we'll be back with a bit of a longer video, a bit more analysis. Like, comment, share and subscribe for all your Geordie Journos content.